Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Kate Hateva, and I'm a founder of Career Pathway Institute, and we are a nonprofit organization that helps internationals to move forward with their career in the US. And I want to give shout out to my team who is behind the scene, Anna, Lana, Sveta, Jenny, and all our team. Hi. And if you're interested to join our community, please take a look at the description below this video, and you will find all the links to our social media and our website. So we are hosting this live stream at the beginning of February 2023, and there are massive layoffs all around the US, and it's very frustrating time for professionals who are looking for a job, and especially for internationals who are non-native speakers. So that's why we decided to host this live stream today and cover such topics like how to crack interview being a non-native speaker. And we invited a very special guest today, Dr. Jessica Gerard, and she's an ex-Stanford and Harvard lecturer. So she'll provide valuable tips on how to enhance our careers. And also during the stream, we will talk about how to learn effective interview techniques, American communication style, how to brag about yourself, about your achievements, and also how to socialize at the workplace with your American colleagues. And also she will share like super helpful techniques, how to get some free educational perks from your company and much more. So please stay with us till the very end. And also please use this opportunity to ask questions from Jessica. She'll be happy to answer your questions. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight already. And without further ado, let's begin. So Jessica, could you please introduce yourself a little bit?
Yes, hello. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Jessica Gerard. I was born in New Jersey in the United States. I have a doctorate in linguistics and language learning, and I was a professor and a program director for many years at a few different universities. Um, I've been in the Bay Area for 6 years, and since I moved here, I've been running a consulting company that provides cultural training to professionals and language coaching and interview coaching specifically for non-native speakers of English. So that's what I do, and I'm very happy to be here. So thank you for inviting me.
That's a pleasure. That's our honor to host you today. So why we will talk about internationals. So being an international, I came here to support my husband's career, and I put my career on hold. And I have a lot of friends who did the same thing with their career. They just put it on hold. So maybe you can give us a piece of advice how to answer on challenging questions. For example, so what was the deal? Like why you have this huge career gap in your resume? How to answer those questions?
Absolutely, absolutely, I will. Kate, do we want to take a peek at that slide, or
Of
we can?
course.
Okay, very good. So, absolutely, folks. Let me say, first of all, again, so happy to be here. And what I want to do, is so I prepare people for interviews. Okay. And just to step back for a second, very quickly, when you prepare for an interview, you need to sort of look at your job description and analyze it, the jobs you'd like to have. You need to make sure you know like the top 15 most important questions that they might ask you. And you need to kind of learn this very US formula for answering questions. And I can teach you that today. You need to think of examples from, your past work experiences. But I've been working with people for 10 years now on interviews, and I have found that there are three very, very, very challenging questions for internationals. Okay. The top one that people talk about is, okay, look, Jessica, I relocated here. I haven't worked in 2 years. Like, how do I handle this in an interview? And I want to share with you a few tips. Number one, I don't know how all of you feel about having a gap. I know it can be very hard. I myself had a gap. I stayed home for a few years to take care of my children. It's incredibly hard, even in your own country, the way you feel about it. However, okay, however, when you think about it, 9 out of 10 Americans have a gap. Like this happens to every single person. And so sometimes when you go into an interview, you feel like I'm the only person with a gap. I can promise you that many other people applying for the same position have had a gap. 9 out of 10 Americans have, not worked for a significant amount of time. So that's a very important thing to know. Another thing I want you to remember before you walk into that interview is you relocated, okay? You know how to organize. You are dedicated, you are committed, and culturally sensitive. You need to understand yourself that way. And if you want to sound impressive after an absence from work for whatever reason, you have here a little magic, a little secret, a little magic. I don't want to call it a trick, but you need to be professionally developed during your time. And I'm going to talk to you about how you do that. So if someone can say to you, hey, can you tell me about this gap in your employment? And you tell them a little about your situation, and then you say, but let me tell you what I did in the interim. Okay.
Mhm.
That's what they need to hear. They don't care that much about a gap. They care who you are now. So what I want to do is show you a specific answer. Okay. So the principle with this question is you flip the question away from your gap and you turn it to how great you are for this new position. And I want to show you exactly what that looks like. I'm going to show you a written example. And by the way, I'll provide a handout for everyone. You can have access to anything you see here. So it's a little long, and I'm sorry if it's small. I'm going to read it out to you, okay? So tell me about your gap. So, as you saw, I've worked in marketing for 15 plus years. After relocating to the United States, I spent some time off the job market. I was arranging logistics and getting settled.
Huh.
During this time, I took courses in artificial intelligence-driven marketing solutions through eCornell and Coursera.
Wow.
You need to do that. By the way, you got to take your courses, right? But then you say, look how positive. It's been really exciting to keep up on these new trends. Now I'm looking for my next position in marketing. I'm excited to apply what I learned. Your company's focus on AI makes me feel this is a really good next step for me. Notice there's no apology here. You're not embarrassed. You're completely confident. Listen to this. Listen to my voice, how I say it. After relocating to the United States, I spent some time off the job market, arranging logistics, getting settled. And during this time, I took some courses. Do you see how you come across to the employer, right? You're confident, you're excited, you've done professional development. That's all they care about.
That's very powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. It's all about mindset.
Exactly. Absolutely. And you are not the only person. Also, just can I add another quick thing?
Of course.
This is also often an issue for women. Women often will take some time off, and when folks relocate, often it's the wife who might take time to resettle the children and the family. And I want to make sure you know that in America and in Silicon Valley, there's a growing movement to support these women. And there are even companies, and I can share some of the names. I don't have them off the top of my head, but I know that there are companies that actually have programs to bring in moms who had to take a few years off. So what I want you to feel in your heart is society understands that gaps exist, and there are huge programs there to even help with that transition. There's one organization called the Mom Project, and they advertise jobs for companies who say, you know what, I'll take a mom, give me a smart woman. I don't care if she's been off for a year, and I'll take her.
That sounds amazing.
Yes.
I think we're going to share those names also in the description below this video.
Absolutely.
It's very useful resources. Thank you so much.
I'll write all of this down for everyone.
It's perfect.
Yes. So what else?
So there are other challenging questions, like we are internationals are very struggling to answer. For example, how to negotiate salary.
That's my next one. That's the next one that I want to talk about. What else? What great comments.
Okay, let's see. Oh, yeah. The answer is so impressive and powerful. Yeah, I'm just reading through the comments.
So glad.
Okay, so
Good.
let's move to another challenging questions.
Would you guys like to talk about how to handle salary?
Oh, sure.
Yes. So here's what's funny, I would like to say. In my experience of working with people on interviews, international, also American, mostly women, but men as well, I have noticed that when you ask people about money, they get nervous. I think it's a hard question, and your English will freeze up. And the best thing to do is be just totally prepared with a memorized set of sentences, which I am going to give you right now. So let's take a peek. Okay, let's talk about salary, right? So now we're going to talk about negotiating salary in a moment. But first, I just want to say, they may ask you at several stages, okay, early interviews, later, after an offer, they might say, what are your salary expectations?
Mm-hmm.
That's when people freeze.
Yeah.
So there's some also new things happening in California, in the United States. So one thing I want you to understand is at the early stages, the first interview before you end up talking with the hiring manager, you don't even have to tell them your expectations.
Oh.
They are actually supposed to tell you the range and be transparent. And that's a new movement in the United States, which is, it's different than, this has changed over the years. The interviewer is trained to try to get what you're looking for. He or she is trained, but at the early stages, they are absolutely not supposed to require it. And if you ask them, any good company with good HR will have to give you a range. Would you all like to know why? It's actually very interesting.
Yeah.
There is a great deal of discrimination in the United States with salary against racial minorities and women and certain groups. So the decision now is make the salary transparent so we know, and everyone should get the same range. Interesting. So at an early interview, if someone says, it's like your first, phone screen, and they say to you, what are your salary expectations? Look, you're welcome to tell them. You're not going to get into any trouble. You did your research and you're like, I'm looking for 80K. Fine. Notice my language. I'm looking for. That's polite. Not I want, I need. I'm looking for. I'm looking for. I'm aiming for. That's the polite way to say it. Or if you want, you are allowed to say, so at this stage, I am just learning, a bit about the role. I don't have a number yet. Would you mind sharing the range for this position? You're 100% allowed to do this now. Okay. So it's your choice. You can just say on the first interview, yes, I'm looking for 80K. I'm hoping for 90K. Or you don't have to tell them. Now look at the language here. It says, would you mind sharing? And I'm sure many of you are aware of that. Would you mind? It's just that polite. Would you mind sharing the range for this position? Beautiful. Now,
beautiful.
After that part is done, let's say you get another interview and now you're talking with the hiring manager, maybe the second or the third. Here is when you're actually kind of supposed to, now you're allowed to say your number so they know. And again, I'm looking for around X. Notice the language. I'm looking for polite, not I want, I need, I have to have, just I'm looking for. Okay.
Got it.
By the way, it should be you research salary, you figure out what you want, and here you say 8 to 15% higher than what you want. That's the formula. So finally, someone asked about negotiations, okay? This is not a negotiation. Before you get an offer, you're not negotiating. After you get the offer, they're tired, they want to hire you, interviewing is hard work. Now you have some leverage. So you can say something along the lines of, well, considering my experience and my living expenses, I am looking for X, and you just give your number. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, these are data based. My experience, you can give them years in numbers. Living expenses, you can say that. They know what the cost of living is. So it's harder to argue with this. It's just very rational, very calm. Do not be nervous. If you feel like you might get nervous in English, just memorize these. Just say it again and again 100 times till it becomes easy. And then finally, if you have gotten any sort of, or you have any sort of special skill or credential, especially during, your gap in employment, I wrote here. So, given my background and my project management something credential, my project management credential, professional, my project management professional credential, I'm sure I can get settled very quickly and get moving on projects. So do you see this is like American style bragging?
Yeah.
They're not saying, give me money because I'm smart. You're saying, I have this credential. I'm a project manager. And because I'm a project manager, you're not going to have to spend that much time training me because I can do this project management job. So those are my comments on negotiations now. Again, you can follow up with more questions on chat, and at the end of this talk, we'll have time to discuss. But language is very important because there's lots of guides out there for negotiating salary, but we need to know how to say it and how to be polite and feel comfortable.
Yeah, and I see the comments and people
Yeah.
are asking. Love the suggestion about the career gap. Oh, sorry, another one. This one. Navigating salary, stocks, benefits is so challenging. So how we can negotiate not only salary, but also the stock options and benefits the same?
The one thing, absolutely. Again, I think it has to do with when you have the offer. Now, I do. No, here's what I want to say about that. I have a handout on this that I'll share with you guys. When it comes to negotiating, one thing that is very nice to do, and it sounds beautiful in English, is to say something like, typically in my other positions, I get X, or I always got X. I'm willing to maybe not have that, but it's really important for me to have certain kinds of benefits. So it's like with this negotiation, you start with I'll, maybe I don't have to take this one thing that I used to get, but I'd really like another thing. And you hear the language again. The language is, at my previous position, I always had, bonuses every year. I see you're not offering that here, but having additional benefits like working from home 1 day a week is really important to me. And I'd be happy to make that work. So the language is very important.
So what would you recommend to negotiate it verbally or over the emails? Like, what's the best strategy?
Look, as an American, I will always say, get things in writing. But they might talk about, when you're in person at an interview, they may want to have this conversation with you. And so you have to be ready. But what you can do is, I'm so excited about this opportunity and I want to think carefully about the package that could work for us. Do you mind if I get back to you on email? But as Americans, we always start with this, not to be fake, but like, I'm really excited about this position. I really want to think carefully about the package. Do you mind if I get back to you over email? That's fine.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm asking because that's my next question. Because, okay, when we are so excited, when we are so nervous and we just losing the words.
Yes.
And sometimes it's really easy just to lost and to freeze and don't feel confident about your proficiency of English. So how to deal with this situation?
And that's the next thing we're going to talk about. So, again, very, very importantly, guys, always remember, native speakers of English get really nervous at interviews. Okay. We all get nervous. So it's fine for all of us to say in a case like this, wow, this is such an exciting position. I'm really, I'm thinking about the benefits package. Would you mind if I got back to you? I'll get back to you later today, right away, within an hour or two.
Great.
You can do that. So
great answer.
Yeah.
So
That being said, what's coming? Let me see. Was there anything else I wanted to say? So yeah, what I was thinking of exactly talking about English. Shall we? And do you have a specific question to start us off, Kate?
Yeah, just I feel sometimes that okay, I'm fluent talking to other people, but in unknown situation, in difficult situation where I don't have enough vocabulary, I start to be nervous and I'm losing my mind. I would say, yeah, but
Absolutely. So
how to
here's
explain it? Yeah,
how do we interview well with the best English possible?
yeah,
Exactly. And that's what I spend all my time thinking and talking about. So here's the thing. It's always important to remember, think back to your interviews in your own country, okay? Really, you have to prepare. Now, in America, they will ask questions that may be different from your country. They might ask something like, tell me about a time you had a conflict with a colleague or supervisor. You're right. They might ask you these, and don't be worried. There's a list of the top 20 questions they ask, and you can learn. But no matter what language it is or where you are, you have to prepare. I mean, native speakers, we're nervous too. I've been nervous at interviews in English, of course. So the key is practice, practice, practice. And you're not practicing because English isn't your first language. You're practicing because that's what we all do for interviews. And we're all scared. Okay. So one of the greatest things to do is I'm going to show you a little later on. There's a number of resources that will walk you through the top 20 questions. You can take a course with me. I offer courses on this, and practice, practice, practice. And as you're practicing, you will see phrases, words, vocabulary, and it'll be fresh in your mind and you'll be able to use it more easily. Look, when I was interviewing, I haven't interviewed in a while, but my goodness, I would get 20 questions I expected them to ask me, and I'd practice in front of the mirror, 5 times. That's what we do. And it's, by the way, interviewing is great for learning English if you could throw away the stress, right? So let's talk a little more about proficiency. Number 1, change your mindset. The Bay Area is totally international. At least 50% of the people applying for your job are not native speakers of English. And guess what? They're hired. Okay. I
and
mean,
another thing that the person who is interviewing you, it's also
oh my,
international.
absolutely. And the person who's interviewing you, sometimes American or not, is nervous or is not sure if they're interviewing you correct, or they might be in trouble if they don't find the right person. You'd be surprised. A lot of times people it's kind of, you get a little nervous with interviews, everybody. So we're all in this together. The Bay Area is international. Any place in the United States that's cool, New York City, the Bay Area, Los Angeles, it's international. Okay? That's who we are. We take the best brains from the world, and here we are. Okay? So number 1, it's international. But here's something else, and I'd love to know what I wish I could see all of your face. I want to know what you think of this. This is very important to me. Americans don't own English. What is your response to that? I mean, that's really important to remember.
It is. And I remember a couple of minutes before we started this broadcast, you said another powerful phrase, and I even write it down. Don't let English hold you back. And God, it's right.
Do not let the English. And I was curious, did anything pop up on the chat, Kate? I wish I could see everyone's faces. Sure. Any responses to that? Americans don't own English,
Yeah. So how to stop thinking during the interview?
Okay, listen to me.
Don't understand your accent.
Everyone is so self-conscious about their accents. Stop. Accents are beautiful. If you really feel like you're getting a lot of feedback that someone can't understand you again and again and again, you can email me and I can help set you up with a pronunciation coach. 99% of the time, your accent is just beautiful, and don't be self-conscious. Really.
Yeah, I have a pronunciation coach, and sometimes he even highlighted, just because you're trying so hard, It makes your language even more attractive. I just want to listen to you.
Very nice. Yes. So, yeah, but just this idea that Americans don't own English. Okay. English belongs to the world. The idea, I mean, really think about it. The idea that all of you should speak English just like Americans. What? Americans have the best English? There are Australians. We barely understand them. There are British people. There are people in New Zealand. There's Indians. Indians in India have a Indian English. That's a legitimate form of English. English belongs to the world. So when you walk into an interview, you remind yourself, I'm using the world's language. I'm not here to speak American. Very important to me. A quick thing I'll say, I've worked with a lot of people in different, I just remember like once I was watching a lecture from this brilliant professor, and he was from another country. He was from Turkey. He'd been here 20 years. He was a brilliant scientist. He made some mistakes. Who cares? Like, really, we're not here to speak English perfectly.
Exactly.
We're here to do our jobs.
Yeah,
So
to listen ideas.
Yeah. Intelligent people who've been around the world and have worked in international places are not noticing your mistakes, and they don't care. Okay. But they want to hear your good stories in your interviews. Kate, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just remembered that when we talked before with you, you mentioned something very interesting. So when they are asking in the job description, you have to have this certain proficiency of English.
Yeah.
So how you can respond to that?
So here's the thing. Honestly, there may be some positions that require now there's technology and chat GPT. So things are probably changing. There are some positions where they're going to have to ask you, like maybe a position where you're writing marketing copy and it has to be really, really, full of slang. And again, chat GPT will do that for us. So this is great news for everyone. But let me just, okay, I'll come back to this. Here, I want to share this. I want to share a sample answer with you. If anyone asks you about your English level, which they really shouldn't, they're going to ask you maybe in a different way, but let me just show you this. I'm going to just read it. Okay.
Okay.
If someone says, tell me about your level of English proficiency. Do you think you can handle, this position? So yeah, and you must be confident. Practice this like 20 times. Yes. Oh, I'm proficient in professional and social English. Maybe I'm not at my best during an interview. Smile, make a joke. But I'm generally very comfortable speaking and writing. My previous position required excellent communication skills. I was the office manager and I handled communication with vendors in writing. Okay. That was in another language, but I'm very proficient in English. I love developing my language skills, and I'm currently taking some courses in professional communication. So it's like, what else can you say? Just be confident, and that's it. Be confident, because that's all they care about. They don't care if you make a couple of grammar mistakes. They want someone who can just speak as they need to speak and feel really comfortable.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also you can add that nowadays with technology, it's super easy.
Yeah.
I'm using this tool and this tool, so I feel comfortable.
Exactly.
Okay. There's a nice question. Let's answer it.
Yes.
So how to act when you cannot understand the question? Maybe the interviewer is using the words you don't know or speaking too fast. So
exactly. So that's a great question. So first I want to say you need to prepare for interviews in two ways. Number one, you need to practice answers so that you can practice telling your stories or talking about yourself, and you get all the words like in your head. Okay. Because if I said to you right now, tell me about a time you accomplished something difficult and you told me that story, there may be some words you just don't remember. So you have to practice. Okay. So step one, practice your 15, 20 questions from the list of questions I'll show you. Number two, there are vocabulary lists that I'll give you of words that people use in interviews, like tell me about your expectations for salary. Sometimes people or tell me about your compensation expectations. your expectations for salary. So there's like a list, there's like a list of 50 words that you have to know. Compensation, there's just certain vocab words that you need to know. So those you can know. So step 1, practice. Step 2, learn this set of interview English words. Step 3, this is the most important thing. Every single person that goes into an interview, me included, has to sometimes ask the interviewer to repeat the question. That just happens. It happens to me. It really happened to me. The interviewer will expect you at least once to ask for clarification. It's not a problem. The worst thing you can do is just pretend you understood. Let's suppose the interviewer asks you a question and you say, listen, I'm sorry. You wanted to know about my biggest accomplishment, or sorry, could you repeat that? I just want to make sure I've got it right. That shows the interviewer that you are a good employee, because you're willing to admit that you don't understand something. And you're willing to ask for clarification instead of pretending everything is fine. Now, if you have to ask the interviewer to repeat themselves, for 5 or 10 questions, that's a sign that you probably need more work and more coaching ahead of time. And that's okay. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes we need more time to develop English proficiency. But promise me, all of you, when you go into an interview, there's going to be at least one time where you have to say, oh, sorry, I just want to make sure. Now listen to my language. I just want to make sure you asked about my, accomplishment, if I'm the most proud of. Also, take a notebook and a piece of paper. And that makes you look like a great employee. When they write a question, write down the word. Right? What if they ask you a question like, tell me about a time you made a tight deadline and you get so nervous you forget deadline? Write it down. What they want.
So there's the following question. So This is so helpful. So where we can find those 50 words?
I'll send them to you. I promise. I will send them to you. No worries.
We will share it too.
I teach them all the time. This is the kind of things I go over in my classes, but I will share, I'm trying to think of other words that are hard, like, churn, the word churn. That's actually a new word. It's employee turnover. So someone once asked a manager, a potential manager, how do you handle or how do you avoid employee churn, CHURN? And the person had no idea what they were talking about. And, they had to say, sorry, when you say churn, what do you mean? And the person explained it to them. But yes, I promise, Kate will not let me forget. I will get you that list.
Thanks. And I think we have another interesting question about, is it normal to admit in an interview that you feel nervous?
Nora, it can happen. I don't think it's horrible. I might say, at the beginning, oh gosh, sometimes I'm a little nervous in interviews, but be careful, a little. Americans love to use the word little to sort of make things gentler, and with a smile. Oh, sometimes I get nervous in these interviews, but you have to handle yourself, like smile. It's kind of a little joke. I wouldn't say that I was nervous if I were really feeling nervous. I don't think you need to share that. And by the way, you will always look much more nervous than you feel. Let me say that again. You think you look really nervous and you're shaking, and they didn't see it. Really.
That's true.
Yeah. Inside your body's shaking. And also, if you're a little nervous, it also shows you're enthusiastic. This is important for you.
Of course. Okay? Yeah. So you care about it.
Yes. And another thing I want to say that's very important about nerves and also American culture in interviews, you have to smile. I know it can be hard, but you have to take a breath and you have to smile and you have to try to calm yourself down, because you also want to make them feel comfortable. They might be a little nervous too, or under stress. Smile. Don't worry about saying you're nervous. I'm glad to be here. If they ask you a question here's another, what if they ask you a question and you don't know what to say? Look, it happens. Oh, that's an amazing question. I just can't think of a specific example right now. But I can say, and then you can, let's say they say, tell me about a time you had a conflict and you just can't think of anything and you go blank and your mind is blank and you want to die because you don't have the answer. You just say, okay, gosh, it's such a great question. I can't think of a specific example of a conflict right now, but I can say people skills are very important to me and I'm a good listener and I know that helps. So always have some backup. And that's another important thing to do before you go into an interview. What are your strengths? I'm a good listener. You can always use that. I'm a good communicator. I build strong relationships.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about the mindset later. But I have another question from the audience. So yeah, that's a good one. When they ask you, do you have any questions for us?
Yes.
Other typical questions to ask the interviewer?
Yeah. So listen, there's two things you can do, but think about it. Just think of it common sense. They want to know that you're excited about the position. And they want to know that you're excited to come in and help them. They need you to be the problem. I mean, they need you to be, see, I make mistakes too when I speak English. They want to know that you are the solution to their problems. They want to know that you're excited. So when somebody says to me, tell me about, do you have any questions for us? I would have researched ahead of time about the company, or I would think about maybe something they told me at the beginning of the interview. For example, we're going through a restructuring now. And I would ask a question to show, you said earlier that you're going through a kind of restructuring. That's really interesting. Can you tell me more about that? Like genuine, there's no need to fake this. Or, I saw on your website that you have this particular service or program. Can you tell me more about that? It sounds really interesting. And pick something that's like true for you and they'll feel it. Now, there's a whole, I can give you this handout too. There's a whole bunch of typical questions you can ask, like, tell me about a typical week, right? Things like that. So you can get information because you also need information. You need to know if you like this. At the beginning, I wouldn't say anything too pushy at the first interview, like, are you guys going to let me work from home 3 days a week? I wouldn't do that yet, unless it's a requirement. Like, by the way, a last part of my answer to you is if there's something that's like a super requirement for you, like that you can't commute every day, then it would be okay and fair and honest of you to say, do you have any questions for us? Yes, actually, hear that? Actually, I wanted to know. Now listen to my language. Actually, I wanted to know, which is the polite way of saying, tell me. Actually, I wanted to know, is it possible in this role to work from home a few days a week? Because that's actually something I'm really looking for. And do you hear my language? The language is the important part. I wanted to know if it's possible. And then you're fine. And then they could say yes or no. So if you have something that's really, 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 really important, like a deal breaker, like you just had a baby and you know that you need to be home, like you don't have to tell them about the baby, by the way. You owe no information whatsoever. This is very important in American culture. They cannot ask if you're pregnant. They cannot ask if you're having children. They cannot ask if you're married. They cannot ask your sexual orientation. And you don't have to tell them anything. It may feel unfriendly, but it's just not their business right now. But all you have to do is say, listen, I wanted to know, would it be possible to work from home? That's really important to me. And if you tell them early on, if it's that important to you, that shows integrity. So remember, they may not pick you for that position, but they still know you. They made a connection.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think let's talk about the mindset, because it's also really important about these cultural differences.
Yeah.
Let's pretend that we already feel confident about our language, our level of English. So what about the mindset? How to pass the interview in American style? Like, how does it look?
So two things. One of them is quick and one of them is long. The quick thing is, as I already said, you know, in an American interview, they are expecting you to smile and you know, to be have a bit of a sense of like happiness and at ease. In many cultures, when to show respect, you would have a very formal face. And actually, Kate, is it okay? I'm so curious. Can I ask if anyone in the audience could they put on chat what countries you're coming from? Is that okay? I'm just dying to
Sure,
know,
of course.
and read them off when they come because I'm very curious to know. So that's one thing, okay? Mindset, like cultural competence. If you come from a formal culture, like I know Russian culture, you know,
Yeah,
as
like Belarus.
tell me, yeah, how
Yeah.
are you supposed to behave, Kate, in an interview? Yeah,
Very professional.
yeah,
No smile.
yeah. No
Maybe just
smiling.
a
Wow,
little bit. Maybe
a
just
little smile.
a little,
Yeah, yeah.
but not like Americans. Like,
Yeah, and by the way, people tell me that it can feel weird and it doesn't feel authentic and they'll feel like they're being fake. So you don't have to make yourself miserable with a giant smile.
yeah.
Just at least a little more, you know, as much
Oh,
as you can.
so we see Belarus, Russia, Turkmenistan,
Oh,
Ireland,
oh,
Kazakhstan, Israel,
oh,
South Korea,
oh,
Colombia. Wow, Kazakhstan. It's very
great.
diverse audience.
Oh, I'm so happy. So yes, all of you will come from culture. And again, in a culture, every people are different. But in general, you know, you're kind of taught a certain interviewing style, and it's important to be comfortable. Now, at the beginning of an interview, you might have that little small talk, right? Everyone keeps telling me they hate small talk in general, especially at the beginning of interviews. Guess what? Americans hate it too in the beginning of
No
an
way.
interview. It's just awkward. But they might say, hey, you know, they used to say before COVID, hey, how was it easy to find the place? You know, just a little something, or, you know, how's the weather over there? Or how are you today? And just smile and say, oh, great. It's been a great day. Weather's great. That's it. And just smile and then you can move on.
Should you ask the same question? Like, and how was your day? How was your morning?
You can. You don't have to, but you can say, yeah, how about you? How was your morning? Absolutely.
Great.
Don't be afraid of it. Just remember, we Americans hate it too. You just got to smile and get through it. Okay. Okay. So we talked about that. Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah, we have a question. Like, could you share a little bit about how to handle the cultural aspect of the interview? For example, in Europe, people are generally more straightforward, so the vocabulary is a little bit different.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's very interesting. Some European cultures are very direct. Germany and people from the Netherlands and France to some degree. So here's what I think would be the best thing to do, if it's okay. What I want to do right now is teach you a formula, the formula that all Americans have to use to answer interview questions. And I'll show you what the American cultural style looks like. And then you can sort of think about how yours is different. And by the way, anyone wants to write to me an email after this with a specific question, I will share my email. Happy to talk about specific cases. But what do you think, Kate? Is that okay? Can I show the American style? Okay. So let's move for a moment my slide. Okay. So we have a technique in the United States called the STAR technique. Now, first I want to say, they're going to ask you a question like, tell me about yourself. And there's, you know, an easy formula for that. There's a formula for everything. And the formulas make life easy, I promise. It makes it much easier. But it's really common for Americans to ask questions like, can you tell me about a time you handled you got something done under a tight deadline? It's a very common type of question. And they're trying to learn all about you. They're trying, if only that, you know, they can't go back in time and transport themselves into your previous workplace to see you. So they ask a story. They ask you for a story. And there's a way to tell the story. I swear it's easier than it sounds. And there's a way to brag and show off in the American style. So I'm going to give you an example. Okay. But first, let me show you. And by the way, this is really common. Like when you interview in companies here in Silicon Valley, often HR will send you a guide to answering this way.
Oh, really?
Because, and you know what, they should, because they want to make things equal for everyone. Not everyone has had, even knows that this is the American style. So just so you know, you might even get a guide from your very own person who wants to employ you. So just so we know what it is, STAR stands for when you give an answer, like tell me about a time you accomplished something difficult. There are 4 parts. You tell the situation, what you did, the action that you took, and the result. Now, the action and the result is very important in America. If someone says to you, tell me about a time you solved a problem at work, you'll say, when I was working at we had this big problem. Then you need to say, step 1, I did this. Step 2, I did that. Step 3, I did that. Your 3 actual actions, so they can imagine in their minds, they could close their eyes and picture you doing this in the room. And then let's get really American. You need the result. You need to say, I solved the problem and we kept the client and the client loved us and referred 5 more people. Now, I don't know if anyone's getting worried at this point. We don't always have this much information for a story, but you'll do your best. You'll look at the sample questions. You'll come up with stories. Everything's going to be fine. Let me show you an actual real example, okay, of what this looks like. It's a lot of text. I'm sorry. So these are very typical questions. Tell me about a time you achieved a difficult goal. Tell me about a time you made a mistake. These are tough ones. There's formulas for this, okay? Tell me about a time you collaborated successfully. By the way, if they wish to find out about your English proficiency, they might ask a question like, tell me about a time you solved a conflict, hoping that you'll show your communication skills, right?
That's true.
Yeah. So let's take a look at an actual example. I'm sorry. I hope this isn't too hard to see. Everyone make your screens big. I will read it. Okay. So someone says, the question is, tell me about a time you solved a difficult problem. So situation. In my previous digital marketing role, my company made the decision to focus on email marketing. Fine. Task. As the email marketing manager, my target was to increase email list, our participants, our people by 50%. Do you see how specific that is? You may not always have these numbers. It's okay. Kate, did you want to say something?
Yeah, that was my question. Yeah. I know that Americans, they're obsessed with numbers. So at least you need to remember the numbers. So
no, the truth of the matter is, look, they're not expecting 50%. But this is a reminder, if you can share a number, do it.
Share it.
Okay. So now here's where it gets really important. Okay. I'm going to read this and then we're going to talk about it. Because here the person talks about her steps in a very intelligent way. She says, look, well, I had developed really strong relationships with the rest of the marketing team, so I easily called together a meeting to plan and host a webinar. And this webinar required an email address to register. So that's pretty detailed, right? Like really explaining, okay? And then she says, I also viewed a few examples of very engaging webinar recordings. She looked on YouTube, and I brought these ideas to the group. Do you see how specific that is?
Yeah.
By the way, I want to ask you a question. Why do you think she even talked about, I viewed a few examples of engaging recordings and I brought the ideas to this meeting I initiated? What is she trying to say here?
That she took an ownership?
Yes, that she took ownership. Okay? I was the one who called the meeting because I build great relationships with everyone and everyone, likes to talk to me. And look at this. What kind of a person looks at examples of great webinars and researches and brings them to the meeting. How would you describe that person?
Very initiative,
Yeah,
like
takes initiative.
entrepreneurial mindset.
Yes, yes. Does the research. So do you see how smart this answer is? Very smart. She told the steps, but she also snuck in there. Look at my positive traits. Okay. I'm a researcher. I'm a planner.
Yeah, proactive, I see.
Proactive. Very exactly. Exactly. And it takes some time to think about how to answer your questions in this way. When I work with people, I say, let's practice. Answer this question, and they answer it the first time. And then I say, but let's expand. Let's tell them more. But anyway, so the interviewer can see how beautiful, really clearly, and your English does not have to be perfect for this. Who cares a couple of mistakes? You just want to say what you did. Now, the result, right? The result, we had nearly twice the number of people we expected. And then here, there's a bunch of stuff we don't need to read, but I increased our list, da. And then at the end, she says, I became the go-to person in the office for marketing questions. Now,
Wow.
I'm curious, do you guys feel like this is showing off? To an American, this is completely a normal way to show your excellence as a candidate. But does anyone in the audience, how do you feel about this answer?
Well, I can share my
Yeah,
experience.
tell me. Kate, yeah, tell us.
Well, for me, it looks like the person is bragging about themselves
Mhm.
and like trying to show up.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if it's all of this is 100% true.
Yeah,
So
like, are they
maybe,
lying?
yeah, lying or not. It sounds too perfect to be
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. Well, look, again, so we have some really good stories, but not all of our stories sound this great. And yes, people exaggerate a little in interviews. Okay. But what's important here is this person understands that you need to tell your steps, show where you took initiative. And it's okay to say at the end, because you already kind of proved it. It's okay to say, listen, after this, people really started, you can say it in a humble way. People started coming to me with marketing questions. And I sort of became a person in the office who was known for this, and I loved it. I loved being the person who, liked to come up with fun new. Do you see that's different than saying, I became the marketing expert and I'm
Yeah,
amazing?
like
No.
go-to person.
Yeah, maybe go-to person is not the best thing. Maybe we should say, look, and after that, I was so interested in marketing, I kept studying it, and people would ask me questions in the office, and I sort of, started doing that more. If it's honest, you can say it.
So where is the line? Because for me, coming from a very, how would I say it, from a culture where you're not used to show up,
Yeah.
then you need to keep a low profile, do not brag about yourself.
I know. And this is hard. It's not easy for Americans either, really, but this is the way we look at it. Show them the data. Show them the steps that you took and show them what happened afterwards. That's just observations, right? That's not even showing off. But you have the right to be proud of your accomplishments, and you have the right to show them that you're proud of what you did. Okay?
Mhm.
And they're going to ask you other questions. They might ask, tell me about a time you made a mistake. And then you have to find a mistake and share the story quickly and show how you fixed it right away and how you learned, so there's a formula for that too. It's not always showing off, sometimes it's being, I did something wrong and I learned from it.
Yeah.
But no, Kate, this to an American, this is not showing off. You can feel comfortable. Just use data. I called a meeting. Yeah, the skill sounds hard to master. Yeah. Well, I don't know many Americans who've mastered this. Interviews can be awful. This is not fun for anyone. Okay. But I want to say something really important. Actually, no, I have to. People, I was going to say especially women, but no, all people need to be able to talk positively about themselves at work. because you want to be promoted. And in America, your supervisor will sit down with you and say, what have you accomplished? And you have to be able to tell them. And it's not showing off at all.
At all.
So
They
that
need to
takes
have
coaching
data.
too. Yeah. And I work with people now who are already employed and they're trying to prepare for a talk with their boss about promotion. And it's all
That
about
could
the
be our
data.
next topic.
Yes, yes. It's all about the data. I did X and I did Y. They're just facts.
Makes sense.
Because if you
Well,
say,
thank you so much.
if you say, I'm amazing at this skill, that's bullshit. You have to give the data and then you're not showing off anymore.
So true. And we have only 5 minutes until the end of our broadcast. And I have a couple of questions.
Yes, love it.
So
Okay. Tiny
let's
question.
first, thank you. If you're not getting the job, is it okay
Yes.
to ask for a reason? And if
Yes.
so, how to ask?
Yes. So you can. So you absolutely can. And I would say something like, thank you so much for this opportunity. You know, if you're able, I would really appreciate some feedback as to why I didn't get the position. If you're able, I'd really appreciate some feedback about why I didn't get the position. Totally polite. Thank you so much. If you're able, I would love some feedback on why I didn't get the position. But here's the interesting thing. America's full of all these legal, there are some companies that are just not allowed to give feedback. It's their policy. So don't take it personally. Sometimes they'll give you tons of feedback and sometimes they won't, but ask, no problem.
Thank you. I also wanted to ask you the very last question, maybe not the very last from my side. I will let the opportunity to other people to ask their questions. But I remember when we was preparing the interview, you mentioned something very important, that some of your clients they're not paying for your service. There's some thing like educational benefits. Could you tell a little bit more about it?
So I want everyone to know this, okay? It could be through your work, or if you don't have work at the moment, your domestic partner or your spouse, sometimes as part of their benefits, have something called educational benefits. So it depends on the company, but sometimes a person comes and they get $2,000, $3,000 for professional development or anything educational, and even their spouse and children could have some money. So they're called educational benefits, and you can ask either your HR or your partner's HR, hi, I would like to know if we have any educational benefits. Don't be shy. So it depends on the company. And if you do have educational benefits, what happens is you can go to any qualified school, and typically you have to pay first, and then they give you the money back. So a lot of my clients do that, and they don't have to pay for any, working with me, and I'll be happy to help you. Another thing to know is if you get a job and you're negotiating, a wonderful thing to say is, hey, does this position come with a professional stipend or educational benefits? Because professional development is really important to me. And that they may be able to give you some extra money. Some people get thousands of dollars and you can take whatever you want. Now, sometimes people say, I don't want to say I'm taking English lessons. First of all, don't be shy. You should tell them. But if you come to someone like me, I have to give them a form and it'll say professional communication. It won't say English grammar. But anyway, so there's just so you feel free to email me about this because you may have resources you don't know about.
Wow, that's very, very important to know. I didn't know about that. And I wish I would know about it earlier. Yeah, and I see some comments. Yeah, we all need training on how to brag gracefully about ourselves.
We do. But it's advocating for ourselves. Now, one quick tip that people, you should always have a list of your accomplishments. Keep it open on your computer, a spreadsheet, and just if you're doing something that's special and important, or you feel like you're doing extra work, write it down, and then you'll use it later.
Very helpful. very helpful information. Thank you so much, Jessica. Is there any resources maybe you can recommend us how to
Yes.
learn English fast? Maybe for free, maybe just not that expensive.
Yes. So, may I show them really quickly this one? I
Of
prepared a
course.
slide so you can,
Sure.
it's nice to see it. And then I'll send you this. This has links. Okay. So first of all, this is actually a little more specific to interviews. Indeed, the search engine has a wonderful set of videos on things related to work and interviewing. They always speak beautifully and clearly. They always have subtitles, and it's just great vocabulary. So step one, find things that are relevant to you. Videos are great. Look at the subtitles, listen to them, do this every day. Things that are important to you. Okay. So if you click on this link, we can send you the actual link. It'll take you to a playlist of YouTube, YouTube's videos, from Indeed. Indeed is the company that provides coaching on, how to answer interview questions. And it's free, completely free. And then also LinkedIn Learning. Most of you can use a library card to get access to it for free, but it's really cheap. And they have
I
full
didn't know
course.
about it.
Yes, go. It's free. Courses not just on interviews, but whatever your job is, they will have a professional development course on it. Graphic design, computers, programming, artificial intelligence, biotechnology, anything you can think of,
Wow.
with subtitles and transcripts, which means the everything that they say is written down for you. It's an amazing way to learn English. Coursera is also free. It's the same thing. I can share with you some vocabulary lists. Also, I can share with you, there are websites that I like. There's Duolingo for quick practice. There's BBC English. There's like millions of websites that I can share. And look, you have to work on it every day. You're here. You have to do it every day. And you will
Wow.
absolutely 6 months from now, you'll be a different person.
This webinar is a treasure. Thank you so much.
Great to hear. Yeah.
So, is there anything else you would like to add? Maybe we missed something very important.
Any other questions from anybody?
Let me see it.
If you feel shy about a question, don't be shy. Ask anything.
Yeah.
Great. Good.
That's fantastic.
Okay.
So if you will come up with the questions later, just don't hesitate. Just write your questions in the section below, and Jessica or we will provide the answers later. And
Kate, is it okay if I share just very quickly about some of the things
sure.
I'm doing? I want everyone to know I do classes that, do very specific interview preparation. I can do it one-on-one. I can do it in groups. If budget is an issue, just don't be shy. Just email me. And for example, in classes, we can do classes online, and the price, we'll talk. And I'm offering another class that just really quickly I want to tell everyone about. If you are experiencing a gap, remember how I showed you that interview question of what to say if you have a gap? And remember the person said, I took some classes on this and that. I have a class where I take people who are in their gap, and I sit with them and I say, how are you going to develop professionally? We're going to make you a plan. You're going to take three classes. You are going to network in this way. You are going to, read professional articles. You're going to do a presentation for us to practice, so that when they ask you that question in an interview, tell me about your gap, or tell me about how you've kept up to date with your industry. You will have the best answer ever, because you need to know all of the technology and all of the trends in your field in 2023. And that's what it's, I've never seen exactly another class like this, so it's hard to explain, but it's just come to the class and we will make sure you have an amazing answer for how do you keep, how have you kept up to date, on these trends. Happy to talk about it more, but I'm very excited. It's a new class that I'm giving. So.
Wow, thank you so
Did that
much,
make sense
Jessica.
to me? Did that make sense? Like, it's an interesting concept for a class, yeah.
Of course, definitely. Yeah. And we will make sure to put all the links to how to find you, how to write you an email, how to reach out to you on LinkedIn. So everything in the description below. And I see people asking if this video will be available after. Yes, so you need to subscribe to our channel, give us a like, share it with your friends, with your family members, with anybody who might benefit from this fantastic live stream. And thank you again, Jessica, for being with us today. And
Yeah.
I
And
hope
I
we
just
can
want
invite you for another
I would love
webinar.
to. And I just want to say that what you're doing is amazing, Kate. I mean, I've known Kate for a while here in Silicon Valley, and this initiative is really beautiful, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Thank you so much
Absolutely.
once again.
Yeah. Great community.
So we're
Good.
gonna do these live streams on the regular basis. So please be sure subscribe on our channel, and we will see you soon.
Great.
So
Good.
bye-bye.
So nice to meet you all.